Tell us a little about your history with the Aero Club. So how long have you been? How long have you been flying for, and how long have you been with the club for?
Well, I first started flying in about 1978, and did a little bit of flying in Paraparaumu on the Kapiti Coast until I bought a farm in 1980 in Taihape, and of course farming in the 1980s wasn't a flash occupation. So I went through that period. I did about 5 hours toward my licence in about 78, and so in 1999 I think it was, I started continued my flying lessons, and I was rattling through that at a great rate of knots, and then I ended up in coronary care, and I lost my medical, which meant that I couldn't fly solo, so I couldn't do any solo consolidation flying towards my licence. So anyhow, I got over all of that, and eventually I think passed my private pilot's licence in 2001. So yes, I've been flying about 22 years. One of those things that for me has always been a great relaxer, you know. And funnily enough, I've always found that it takes you away from the stresses of life. Because there's one thing's for sure, when you're flying, you can't pull over and park on a cloud. You concentrate exactly on what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything else that's going on in the world and going on in your life is secondary to actually what you're concentrating on, which is flying an aeroplane. It's just great.
Yeah.
Always loved it. And I think, you know, we often talk about what would you do if you had your time over again. Probably would have actually been a professional pilot if I could have. But, you know, that's looking back 50 years then, and those just occasionally the things that you think about.
Yeah, so that's why we're here today.
Why we're here today.
Yeah, yep. the aerodrome.
Yep.
And so
Nirvana,
as you call it. Where's home for you?
So my spiritual home is Kapiti, Paraparaumu. Although it's not the little village it was when I grew up there, and it's you know, it's quite different now. But it is the spiritual home, and the family's been there since 1839, when my great-great-grandfather, Bishop Hadfield, arrived on the coast to start his long relationship with Te Rauparaha. My great-grandfather then bought the land that was the family farm. So he farmed, and actually he was also Maori interpreter in the Legislative Council and Parliament.
Yeah.
So another interesting thing.
You are known for some of your sayings that you will say in the chambers, and you sometimes get like a little bit of a rap over knuckles with certain language. One of your favourites is bollocks.
Yeah, well, bollocks is a good one, because quite frankly it's probably more polite to say bollocks and bullshit. and look, I do understand that a certain standard has to be maintained in council and public forum. Outside of public forum, of course, it's open dictionary, I think. But you know, look, every now and then I do slip a bloody in, and you know, and I try my best not to. But you look, I've always had a few sayings, and as much use as a cat flap in an elephant house was one that I've come up with. I think another one that makes people sit up and actually wonder what the hell I've said is smother my chest in honey and strap me to an anthill. And I think, as you know, ants and honey would, you know, be a bit of an invasion. If I was a drinking man, I'd be perpetually pissed. You know, it's actually quite ironic, that one, because I don't actually drink, and I haven't drunk alcohol or caffeine for health reasons for about 23 years now. Wow. So alcohol and caffeine both put me in coronary care.
Did you find those like alcohol and caffeine hard to give up?
Yes and no. Alcohol was the first incident that put me in coronary care with heart failure, I think they described it as. So that wasn't an immediate give up, but I actually had 2 stays in coronary care, and by the time the second one came around, I'd figured that stimulants my body weren't a match. So no, actually sometimes in life you get a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the second visit to coronary care that was brought on by caffeine, actually, that time.
Yeah.
And I realised that stimulants in me weren't a go.
What was your background before local politics? So I know that you were a farmer, but there was also a publishing background as well?
Yeah, well, look, funnily enough, when I left school, I sort of fluffed around a bit for a year, and I worked for Shell Oil, actually, in Wellington.
Oh, okay.
But then I spent about 5 years working for a publishing book wholesaler in sales and marketing role. And I actually really enjoyed that for a while, but a lot of travel. And after that, it was really when I decided I think I'll hop back into the family farm. So I worked at home for a bit, then shot through to Whangaihua, as I said, and bought the place in Taipi. And of course, that didn't end too well at the end of '80s when Rogernomics turned rural New Zealand up on its head. And I thought, what the hell do I do? And I got a job back in the publishing game again with Reed Publishing. And so I spent another 5 years in Reed Publishing. My wife and I separated at this time, and I actually found it quite difficult, trying to have the kids as well as travelling a hell of a lot. And then I managed the Manawatu Agricultural and Pastoral Association for 6 or 7 years. That's quite interesting, actually, and it taught me a lot because voluntary organisations like that, it's quite interesting. It teaches you a lot about working with people because they're all volunteers, and it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
And in amongst that, I learned about event management. Ran a couple of royal shows at the Palmerston North Showgrounds, where the AMP was based at the time. Now moved over to Manfield, of course. And then I think in 2002, I took a position with a newly established organisation called FarmSafe. And I led that organisation for 13-14 years and retired from that mid-2015, I think. So we undertook training in the rural sector, quad bikes, motorbikes, chainsaws, tractors, four-wheel drives, stock handling, all that sort of stuff, funded through Vote Education.
Yeah.
And so then we went on and further developed other programs around farm safety plans, all sorts of stuff. So I had a crack at a by-election when Ian McKelvey, I think, vacated the mayoralty to become the MP for Rangitik. So I had a crack at that by-election, which Wayne Ellery won.
Yeah.
So I dipped out there, and really, how some things you've just got to line your ducks up. And I guess whenever it was, 2019, I had a crack, got elected. And last year, had another crack, got elected. So there you go, here I am. No platform, other than that I'm a staunch defender of democracy. The principle and integrities of democracy are probably the most important thing to me. Totally opposed to national politics or political parties being involved in local government. I think it's wrong, it's fundamentally wrong. Because, if you have an allegiance to anything other than your community, I struggle to see how you can actually do it justice.
What is something tangible that you see council achieving within this next term that you'd love to see happen?
There's a whole heap of things, Ben, really. I'm really keen to see continuation of the wastewater centralisation, and we're not far away from Sanson coming on. Rongotia is getting there. I'm really keen on that. I'm really keen on any initiatives that we can to reduce waste to landfill, and there's a couple coming, I think. As a community, one thing we can do to impact reduced emissions is actually significantly dropping the amount of stuff that goes to landfill. And when you look at the strategy on waste minimisation, we've got food collection coming, I think next year, isn't it? I think moving to food collection, and there's huge potential around that, as we've seen in other parts of the country. And where Auckland truck their stuff down to Reparai. So there's a lot of exciting technology, I think, on the way. But to me, that's one of the big things we can do is reduce all the crap that we put in landfill.
Yeah.